from the moment I was born, I did not cry nor fuss. The Empress thought she had given birth to a dull-witted child. She prodded me and even tapped me. I, however, remained stubbornly silent. Several imperial physicians took turns, but they were all at their wits' end. Just as the Empress was about to lose her mind from anxiety, Father arrived. But little did he know, as soon as his hand touched my face, I let out a cry of sheer impatience. Everyone present was stunned. Father was taken aback at first, and then, unexpectedly, he burst into hearty laughter. He amused himself by pressing on my cheeks, teasing me on purpose. Exasperated to the limit, I screamed again. Father remarked that his eldest princess had a rather haughty temperament. He was quite fond of it. The very next second, he issued an imperial decree, proclaiming that the birth of the daughter to the Empress was a heaven-sent omen of fortune. The whole kingdom celebrated, and taxes were remitted for a year. Gifts flowed into the Chongqing Palace like a rushing stream. Yet, even when everyone thought we were living in perfect harmony, I absolutely refused to nurse. Several wet nurses tried their hand, one after another, even bringing the milk bowl right up to my lips. But I just would not open my mouth. The Empress grew anxious. With a grim face, she ordered for warm water to be brought. "I shall feed her myself." The nanny cried out that such an act was beneath her status. But the Empress had made up her mind. When she leaned in close, I was completely caught off guard. The Empress was actually crying. Her tears fell directly onto my face. Through her tears, she begged me to drink the milk. Watching her sorrowful face, I secretly let out a sigh. Fine, what can I do when I am but an infant? So I hardened my heart, and with eyes closed, I took a sip from the bowl. She ate, the eldest princess ate. The Empress's worry turned to joy in an instant. But no sooner had I taken 2 sips, Father walked in, and he caught the Empress nursing me, right in the act. Father gently patted the Empress's head. The Empress blushed fiercely from shyness. I felt like my sanity was falling apart on the spot. I truly could not stomach this milk anymore, so I firmly opened my mouth to go on strike. The Empress immediately became coquettish. It is all the Emperor's fault for interrupting the princess's meal. However, Father took me into his arms and laughed heartily. This eldest princess sure has a temper that is anything but small. Hearing this, the Empress turned pale. As a princess, if one does not gain the Emperor's favor, the future is grim. But what Father did next left everyone speechless. He began to poke my face frantically, 1, 2, 3 times, until I could bear it no longer, and let out an impatient yell. Father, however, only laughed even happier. He bestowed upon me the name Xiao Chanwang right there and then, saying that I was as eloquent as if I knew everything. From then on, whenever he was free, he would come to poke my face, only stopping when I cried out in annoyance. But this amusement only lasted for a month, because a month later, when he came to poke my face again, I endured without making a sound, instead staring daggers at him. The first day I glared at him. The second day I glared at him again. For 6 days straight he poked me, and I glared at him. He was actually holding a grudge against me. An infant, there was no help for it. In the end, I had no choice but to let out a half-hearted cry. He was so delighted, he laughed out loud. But for the next 37 days, he did not come to see me at all. That was when I realized. Rumors had long been spreading outside that I was a sign of misfortune. They said that since I was born, there have been heavy snows and famine everywhere. Just when everyone thought I was about to fall out of favor, Father returned for my 100-day celebration. He not only ignored the rumors and stayed away from me, but instead held a grand banquet and carried me the entire time. During the Zhuazhou ceremony, when I saw the anticipation in his eyes, I unhesitatingly grabbed the jade ring he had personally placed there. That was a symbol of imperial power. The Emperor was absolutely delighted on the spot, and kept showering me with kisses. The entire court of officials was left in shock. From then on, he visited even more frequently. Sometimes I would stare at him with a deadpan expression. Sometimes I would favor him with a smile, and sometimes I would simply play dead. But his next decision left the Empress petrified on the spot. He was actually planning to pick a future husband for me. I was only 4 months old. I could not even sit upright yet. The Empress panicked, fearing I would not meet his expectations. But the Emperor did not care about any of that. He even started scouting for playmates for me. In the blink of an eye, by 5 months old, I could sit steady. At 6 months, I refused breast milk and started on solids. By 8 months, I could already stand up while holding on to things. Just as I was learning to stand, I plopped down on my bottom. My Empress mother was heartbroken at that moment, holding me and refusing to let me practice anymore. With no other choice, I had to secretly crawl up in the middle of the night to practice. By the time I was 9 months old, not only could I walk, I also had my father laughing his head off, constantly bragging about my wits. Yet immediately after, he brought me an instructor. I was only 9 months old. He was trying to rush my growth prematurely. Grand Tutor Lin had been lecturing for several days. I simply could not take it anymore. I let out a long sigh. At that very sound, both Grand Tutor Lin and my nurse were stunned. The nurse asked me anxiously if I was feeling unwell somewhere. I had no choice but to speak up. I am fine. The next second, the entire palace was in an uproar. The maids shrieked that the princess could talk. My father rushed over that very day. He held me in his arms, demanding that I call him father. But I refused, just making a sound instead. He wanted me to call him father, but I insisted on saying daddy. He actually thought I was deliberately being contrary, thinking it was a sign of my brilliance. He started showering me with gifts on the spot. Well, this was great. My brilliance made the Grand Tutor even more hyperactive. At 10 months old, he actually wanted to teach me calligraphy. I held the brush and stared daggers at him. That gaze of mine was basically asking him if he was even human. But Grand Tutor Lin did not care. He was dead set on forcing me to practice. I learned exceptionally fast. Grand Tutor Lin bragged about me to my father every single day. As a result, in his excitement, he even hired a tutor Zuo for me. But this newly arrived tutor Zuo, after teaching for 3 full days, had not even seen me touch a brush once. The emperor flew into a towering rage on the spot. Pointing his finger at him, he berated him, saying, "If Grand Tutor Lin can achieve this, why can't you? If you hinder my daughter's education, I will not show you mercy." Tutor Zuo was scared out of his wits. He had no choice but to secretly try another approach. It turned out he actually knew how to handle me. I am naturally lazy, so I need to be coaxed, not pushed. When Grand Tutor Lin could not make me do it, he would buzz in my ear like he was reciting scriptures. Only when I could no longer stand it would I pick up the brush. And so this Tutor Zuo started mimicking him, nagging incessantly by my ear. It was so annoying that even the palace maids were going crazy. Only then did I impatiently pick up the brush. And in this way, by 11 months old, I had exhausted 2 tutors. My father was very busy with state affairs, but his attention toward me never wavered, especially when I turned 1 year old. The number of tutors has doubled to 4. None of the 4 arts zither, chess, calligraphy and painting were spared. It is said these 4 old codgers discuss every day, plotting how to deal with me. It does not stop there. My father always loves to pinch my expressionless face. Every time he pinches it, I frown, but the more displeased I am, the more delighted he seems to be. Once, when he was holding me, I suddenly reached up and pinched his face back. The servants present immediately knelt in a flurry. Father's expression darkened on the spot. "You dare pinch your emperor?" I was utterly fearless, pinching his other cheek as well. He glared at me, attempting to intimidate me, but I was not only unafraid, I increased the strength of my grip. Father was stunned right there. A 1-year-old child, where could she find such strength? The next second, he actually nagged about getting me a martial arts instructor. In the blink of an eye, it was the New Year's Eve banquet. A group of children from noble families were brought in. "Chanwang, take a look and choose a playmate for yourself." I scanned the room. All I saw were trembling little brats. They were an eyesore. So I dismissively closed my eyes, leaned directly onto Father's shoulder, and prepared to sleep. To my surprise, Father was not angry. He even smiled and ordered them all to withdraw. I thought I could finally have some peace after the banquet. But the next day, Father tested my lessons. The day after, he took me for an undercover visit among the people. Holding my hand, he spoke of how the way of a ruler is simply to make his people smile. I could not be bothered with his lecture, but looking at his satisfied smile, he seemed very proud of his own achievements. Soon after, we arrived at the general's estate. Father reminisced with the old general, and had the old man's 2 grandsons accompany me for a stroll. Just then, a round little fatty came charging at me regardless of anything. My attendant immediately shielded me behind him, while the general's eldest grandson, Lu Xianju, grabbed that little fatty, thundering an order. He dragged him to me to pay respects. I was too lazy for small talk and simply turned to leave. However, I never expected that just as we returned to the palace, a disaster would strike that very night. A concubine had a miscarriage, and all evidence pointed directly at my mother, the empress. That concubine was crying and wailing on the floor. Father ordered my mother to take me back first. Just as mother was about to take me away, that concubine who lost the child would not have it. "Your Majesty, why must you be so partial to the empress? The child in my womb was also yours." Mother's footsteps came to an instant halt. I lifted my head to look at her, then scanned the room. Every concubine present was staring at my mother with envious and hateful eyes. Father's partiality, combined with the so-called ironclad evidence, only made everyone more convinced that the Empress was the culprit. I realized in an instant that if this charge were to stick, Mother's authority in the harem would be completely shattered. So I hesitated no longer. I pulled my mother and forced her back into her seat. Father frowned at me, but I did not care to acknowledge him. I stared at the palace maid on the ground and asked coldly, "You claim the Empress instructed you to poison the concubine?" Yes, your majesty, the Empress ordered it." "Then describe it in detail. When and where did the Empress instruct you? Who else was present? And where did the poison come from?" This rapid-fire questioning caught the maid off guard. Poisoning in the palace is a crime punishable by extermination of the 9 clans, a conspiracy riddled with holes. How dare you conspire against the mother of the nation? Upon hearing the words, execution of the 9 clan, the maid completely collapsed, frantically banging her head to beg for mercy. "Princess, please spare me," it was Consort Zui. "She ordered me to frame the Empress for this tragedy." Consort Zui turned pale and crumpled to the floor. Yet my father, the emperor, showed no mercy, dragged them all away for execution. Mere moments later, their wailing echoed from outside. I frowned slightly, only for my father to hoist me onto his lap, thoughtfully covering my ears with his large palm. He barked toward the outside. "Are you lot deaf? Don't you know to drag them further away? If you frighten the princess, I shall have your heads." That little wretch, Consort Zui, seeing that I was not father's favorite, and conversely, the apple of his eye, began to cry in grievance. Turns out, this only annoyed him further. "Enough. Stop crying." After barking at her, father scooped me up. "Come now, my eldest princess must sleep. Father will carry you back." Upon returning to the palace, father sat me on the bed, and immediately issued a decree to eunuch Chong, and, tomorrow, summon the eldest princess to the imperial study. By the next morning, as I finished my breakfast, I was whisked away to the imperial study. It was only then I understood father's intent. He had actually assigned 4 secret guards to protect me. Eunuch Chong, and standing nearby, was floored. That was an honor typically reserved for the crown prince. I cast a calm glance at the 4 guards and offered my gratitude to my father. "Thank you, father." Clearly, the incident with Consort Zui had put him on guard. After all, I am but a 1-year-old child, able to clear the Empress's name. Now, no one dares to question my intelligence. But for the same reason, my carefree days have come to an end. By the new year, my workload had doubled. And father even assigned me a martial arts instructor, forcing a 1-year-old toddler to practice deep stances. My wet nurse was so heartbroken she could not stop crying. The Empress felt father was being far too harsh on me, and after much hesitation, she finally went to plead on my behalf, only to be met with a frigid, cold response. "I have my own plans for the eldest princess's upbringing. The Empress is to stay out of it." With pleading off the table, mother could only have the imperial physician check my pulse daily, and the kitchen would brew restorative tonics every day. In truth, possessing an adult's soul, I did not feel the fatigue at all, but this rigorous daily tutoring began to make me suspicious. Is father grooming me to be his successor? Soon, rumors began to swirl around me. "She is just a princess, right? Why does His Majesty favor her so?" I could not be bothered with such petty gossip, preferring to bury my head in my lessons. My tutor suddenly suggested taking me out of the palace for some sketching. After consulting with the other tutors, he actually proposed this idea to the emperor. Father initially disagreed, but considering my intellectual capacity, he eventually relented. So we slipped out of the palace incognito, everyone in my entourage in plain clothes. From the early morning until the evening, our party finally arrived at Lian Temple. I thought I could finally take a breather. Little did I know, the tutor had more energy than I did. The moment he entered, he set up his ink and brushes, demanding I start painting right then and there, justifying it by saying the light fluctuates daily. The scenery changes, a moment not to be missed. I gave him a slow, cold glare, but in my cute, babyish appearance, it carried zero authority. Consequently, he was not scared at all, and instead stared at me with pure anticipation. What else could I do? I had no choice but to resign myself and pick up the brush. Grand Tutor Lin impatiently snatched the painting away. His grin stretched from ear to ear. Right after that, Grand Tutor Lin took my painting to report me to father. When father saw that painting of mine, his expression changed in an instant. A landscape painting of exquisite beauty, yet it concealed a murderous intent. He was struck with fear, terrified that a 1.5-year-old daughter of his might grow up to be a tyrant. He even worried that this vast Shao kingdom would be ruined in my hands. So he immediately questioned Grand Tutor Lin. "What do you think?" Grand Tutor Lin was trembling all over. He claimed I was perhaps just too tired. Father actually believed him, and with that, the blame was shifted straight onto Grand Tutor Lin. He scolded Grand Tutor Lin, saying he should not have forced me to paint so many pieces a day. Now Grand Tutor Lin was completely bewildered. He could not defend himself, and felt truly aggrieved. It was father's royal command that forced him to drill me so intensely. Yet now he was the villain of the story. Just as Grand Tutor Lin was lost in thought, father raised his voice. "Aside from Grand Tutor Lin, all of you must go a bit easier on the princess. Don't push her until she breaks." With this order, the tutors felt even more anxious. On their way back, they whispered to each other, saying that father still has no prince. Yet he put such effort into nurturing a princess. What could his hidden agenda be? If a prince is born later, and I turn out even more capable than him, would not that cause chaos in the realm? Grand Tutor Lin rushed back to the Grand Tutor's mansion through the night. He went to meet his dear acquaintance, who at this late hour was still burning the midnight oil over his books. Grand Tutor Lin set down his scroll and asked with great interest, "Why have you returned so soon?" "Because the princess painted 2 pictures. The first is a view of Lian Temple at night. Looking up, one sees the prayers of the mortals. Looking down, the compassion of the Buddhas, a masterpiece of divine sorrow." "And what about the third one?" Grand Tutor Lin's face turned pale. "The second was a landscape of mountain peaks in the mist. The atmosphere was vast, but it secretly harbored a murderous intent." "What? A 1.5-year-old princess has murderous intent in her paintings." At this, even this esteemed tutor who once taught father could no longer sit still. The Grand Tutor declared that if she is not carefully guided, she will surely become a catastrophe. And at this very moment, I was peacefully reading in the palace. Outside the door, a voice announced, "The emperor has arrived. Father is here." I stood up to pay my respects. He looked at my porcelain doll face. His eyes filled with disbelief. He could not, no matter how hard he tried, connect the child before him with that painting reeking of murderous intent. He remembered the thunderous methods I used to clear my mother's name, a level of sheer audacity that even many adults could not match. He finally understood. I was never a normal child. Just as he was dazed, I knitted my brows and spoke softly. "Father, father." He snapped back to reality. "Why are you still reading? You won't grow if you do not sleep." Isn't it father who has been personally supervising the tutor, asking him to be strict with my lessons? Father was rendered completely speechless by my words. He decided to cut straight to the chase. "My dear daughter, what are you trying to kill?" Eunuch Chang'an laid the painting before me. It was meant to be a magnificent landscape, but now it looked eerie, lurking with lethal intent. I took one look at the painting, too lazy to pretend any longer, and spoke coldly. "That scoundrel is getting on my nerves. I feel like killing him." I caught a sharp twitch at the corner of the emperor's mouth. He probably never expected me to admit it so bluntly. Then he prodded me further. "A ruler must not slaughter the innocent without cause." I replied to him with complete composure. "Isn't that scoundrel already dead?" He froze in an instant. It took him a while to squeeze out a response. "I am impressed, my child, that you can control your murderous intent." I was truly speechless. Why did he even come here to talk such nonsense to me? After that incident, my lessons became much more relaxed. In the blink of an eye, my 2nd birthday arrived. That day, the gifts I received piled up like a mountain. Zufeng stood aside and recorded every single gift in the register. After my 2nd birthday, the Empress Dowager wanted to hold a grand celebration, but the emperor flatly refused. Not only that, but he took me incognito out of the palace. While walking down the street, the emperor specially bought me a sugar-coated hawthorn skewer. I took a bite, find it cloyingly sweet. It was so sour it made my teeth ache. I immediately shoved the skewer toward the emperor's mouth. He shook his head, but I insisted he eat it. In the end, he took one bite, his brows knitting tightly. "It is truly terrible. Not even a dog would eat this." I turned around and tossed it to Zufeng. The emperor stated he wanted to take me for a stroll in the West Marketplace. Zufeng panicked on the spot, saying the West Marketplace was chaotic, too dangerous, and that we should visit the East Marketplace instead. But the emperor would not listen. He dragged me directly into that chaotic and lawless West Marketplace. The scene in the West Marketplace was truly a living hell. Everywhere were commoners selling their own children, and those branded children of condemned criminals. A crowd suddenly surrounded us. In their eyes there was a desperate yearning to survive. Just then, the emperor suddenly asked me, "Does the princess think these people are suffering?" I shook my head. The emperor stopped in his tracks, brows tightly knit. Zufeng was so scared his face turned deathly pale. I knew this was the emperor testing me. Testing a 2-year-old crown princess, to see if she is qualified to be a ruler. And my reply obviously did not please him. True hardship is to fight, to fail, and yet to fight again. It is to struggle with all one's might, yet still tumble. These people do not even have the heart to resist. They just drift with the tide and accept their fate. In my eyes, this is not hardship. This is what they deserve. The emperor was stunned, then immediately continued his probe. If you were the ruler, how would you handle it? Why must it be handled? Naturally, one hopes they lead better lives. And how do you know they are not living well right now? How can you call this living well? As long as people desire something, they will strive for it. Courtiers scheme for power. The emperor governs the realm for the sake of the people. Even those with no way out will sell their kin for a chance at life. But what of those who have already given up on themselves? Even if you lend them a hand, they will retreat by themselves. Therefore, a temporary predicament is not to be feared. Accepting the predicament, that is what is truly terrifying. After hearing this, the emperor was utterly floored, staring blankly at me. A 2-year-old toddler actually understood so much. It was clear that my answer satisfied him greatly. The test over, the emperor immediately gave orders to return to the palace. Once back, I returned to my studies. Simple imperial stratagems are the least of my concerns. Yet, the emperor turned around and summoned several high officials, Duke Chong, and recounted my words from earlier, word for word. Hearing that, those old men were petrified on the spot. After the shock, they suddenly felt a sense of certainty. At this moment, they finally understood. The emperor truly intends to appoint me as the crown princess. Half a month before the New Year's Eve, I was ordered to visit the Lin mansion in person. That old man with the white beard looked quite benign at first glance. Who knew that beneath his gentle smile, he was plotting to catch me off guard from the very start? He asked for my views on why father commissioned him to be my tutor. It was because father believed I possessed the aptitude to rule. No sooner had I spoken than I saw Grand Tutor Lin's pupils suddenly contract. He immediately pressed me, were these my own thoughts? Or had someone coached me? I arched an eyebrow and countered. Time reveals the truth of the heart. I see no need to explain myself to you, Grand Tutor. At that, the old man's complexion changed instantly. Yet he did not stop there. He immediately brought up the remarks I made at the West Market a few days ago. I had anticipated he would ask about that. So I promptly provided 2 examples. Take the sage Fan Li, who suffered in poverty during his youth, before becoming immensely wealthy before 20. And then there is Bai Li Shi, who rose from the status of a slave to eventually swim against the tide and become a powerful official. Possession, loss, gain. Comparison breeds appreciation. What comes too easily is never cherished. I may help them escape their plight today, but what of tomorrow? If enemies invade, will they rely on the enemy for aid? A ruler must understand the hearts of the people. But in this world, there is a principle known as survival of the fittest. The strong conquer all, while the weak must forge their own path. But if the strong bully the weak, how should that be handled? Then it simply means the sovereign is not ruthless enough. That remark left him completely speechless. He did not teach me anything else that day, just tossed me a book, and dismissed me to rest. Just then, a man walked in from outside. Father. You heard everything the princess just said, did not you? Indeed I did. She is not one to be soft-hearted. Though the princess lacks compassion, her vision is remarkably far-reaching. She possesses the makings of a ruler. And so I spent my first day at the Grand Tutor's mansion. It was only by the second and third day that I was permitted to spend the entire day with the Grand Tutor in the library. He would occasionally critique my calligraphy and share various tales, asking for my perspective afterwards. One of them concerned a man named Wang, who, due to a large family, could not pay his taxes. I offered my solution without a second thought. In our Shao kingdom, pregnant women should be exempt from head taxes, and their husbands should be spared from labor service for a year. If they still cannot pay taxes under such circumstances, then an investigation is mandatory. First, determine if they truly cannot pay, or if they are willfully evading them. If the latter, seize their children to settle their debt through labor. If they truly cannot pay, then proceed with further investigation. Is it due to some natural disaster leading to a poor harvest? Or perhaps the land yield was insufficient, or maybe the crops themselves were flawed. Next, investigate the local populace. If only this one person is suffering, let the local officials assist them through their difficult times. If the entire local populace is in such a state, it must be that the local officials, relying on the distance from the emperor, are derelict in their duties. In that case, dispatch inspectors throughout the Shao kingdom to purge all corrupt officials. thereby pacifying the hearts of the people. No sooner had I spoken than the Grand Tutor directly showed me the door. I bowed, entered the carriage, and returned to the palace. But I had barely left when he went to see the emperor. Grand Tutor, what have you taught the princess over these 3 days? Grand Tutor repeated my words, verbatim, for father to hear. Father was filled with shock. He asked the Grand Tutor, Grand Tutor, do you now acknowledge that the princess has the aptitude to rule? This humble subject hears that when she is displeased, murderous intent arises. If one day she ascends to the throne, she must not execute her ministers simply because of a few disagreeable words. My father actually laughed. Grand Tutor Lin was stunned on the spot. Grand Tutor, she is only 2 years old. Then father made his stance clear. If I truly possess the capability of a sovereign, he would appoint me as crown princess. But if a more exceptional candidate appears later, he would select another to ascend to the throne. He would never simply hand the empire over to me. In the blink of an eye, it was New Year's Eve. Eunuch Chong and personally delivered father's New Year gift. I opened it and found a string of beads. Eunuch Chong'an immediately explained, this is a 4-eye Bodhi prayer bead necklace. Exactly 36 beads, symbolizing grand wisdom from small insights. And that most striking crimson red bead was actually a piece of cranial cerera. The 3rd day of the new year, father sent me to deliver gifts to the tutors. He even granted me permission to roam outside the palace. Who knew that when Grand Tutor heard I was going out, he actually took the initiative to accompany me. Walking on the main street, Grand Tutor suddenly spoke. He pointed at the joyful crowd on the street, remarking on the prosperous and peaceful new atmosphere of the nation. But then he took a turn in his tone, mentioning the heavy snow from last winter, where many people perished. I offered a cold smile. If a mere blizzard leads to death, it only proves the commoners are too impoverished. Grand Tutor argued that wealth is far from easy to attain. To seek prosperity, one must first build roads. With good roads, the commoners can conveniently see doctors, or transport grain to trade. With money, they won't be left to starve or freeze to death. But when Grand Tutor heard this, he let out a long sigh. He agreed the idea was sound, but the national treasury has absolutely no funds. Good heavens, not only are the people poor, but even the state treasury is empty. I toyed with the Bodhi beads in my hand, and said nothing more. Yet the Grand Tutor insisted on pressing further, asking for my thoughts on the national treasury. I shot him a piercing look and countered. Grand Tutor, how much money is in the treasury? I know nothing of the incomings and outgoings. By asking me this now, are you not being a bit too impatient? Grand Tutor was momentarily at a loss for words. A dignified Grand Tutor was actually stumped by a 2-year-old toddler like me. He recovered quickly and smiled, saying, in a few days, I will show the entire treasury ledger to you. I nodded. At noon, we dined at a tavern. A storyteller was holding court with grand eloquence. First, he was singing praises of some flower princess, born with a natural fragrance that makes all flowers bloom. Then he started praising the 8 princes of Mengyuan, claiming that at 1 he raced horses, at 2 he shot arrows at 100 paces, and at 3 he could hunt down ferocious tigers. Listening to his exuberant performance, the guests below were cheering repeatedly. My expression, however, darkened. I called out softly, someone, go check on this storyteller. If he is from our Shao kingdom, punish him severely. Grand Tutor was shocked and quickly asked why. Our Shao kingdom is vast and prosperous, yet he refuses to praise us, choosing instead to fawn over another nation. Should such a person who forgets his roots not be punished? The Grand Tutor actually tried to defend him, claiming this is just how he earns a living. I cut him off directly, then he should stop eating and starve to death. This time, the Grand Tutor was completely speechless. Back at the Grand Tutor's residence, Master Lin saw him looking exhausted, and curiously asked what they had done. I only heard the Grand Tutor smiling bitterly, saying the princess spoke logic. He could not refute it, and only felt mentally worn out. Once the holidays passed, my lessons began again. Grand Tutor Lin took me to see Minister Ren. He had spent half a year begging the minister to tutor me. The minister kept pushing him away with excuses about his busy schedule. With no other choice, Grand Tutor Lin had to invoke my father's name. Only then did the minister finally relent, but his terms were rather harsh. He said I could look through the policies of the 6 ministries at will, but he would absolutely not provide personal guidance. He even claimed that his daily responsibilities were so immense that even a moment's delay would harm the nation. Grand Tutor Lin had no choice but to agree. The Grand Tutor lowered his head and asked where I wanted to go first. I spoke up without a moment's hesitation. To the Ministry of Revenue, to check the grain supplies. After all, the people's livelihood is paramount. Grain is the foundation of it all. As soon as I entered the ministry, I went straight for the records of agricultural output across the provinces, the total land area of the Shao Kingdom, the acreage under cultivation, and the yield per acre. I performed a quick mental calculation. A national population of 40 million, taking into account an average consumption of 1,000 caddies per person and subtracting the various tax levies. The imperial granary was short by a full 30 million pickles. Grand Tutor Lin was stunned on the spot. He asked me, disbelievingly, "Your Highness, are you certain you did not miscalculate?" Perhaps I did miscalculate. After all, given how officials at every level skim off the top, losing 1 in 10 is quite normal. The Grand Tutor's expression darkened instantly. Losing 1 in 10. How is that considered normal? This is corruption at its finest. To dare to embezzle 30 million pickles of grain tax. That much money would be enough to pave every road in the kingdom. The Grand Tutor turned grim, immediately saying he would report this to my father. I returned to the palace while he left. The Grand Tutor went straight to find Minister Ren. Before he could finish, Minister Ren let out a sharp retort. Nonsense. My Ministry of Revenue has hundreds of staff, and with all of us, we can't make sense of the ledgers even after months. And you expect me to believe a toddler managed it in a day? You should not be questioning the princess right now. You should hurry and investigate before I report this to the emperor myself. At that moment, the minister finally understood. The Grand Tutor was giving him a chance. So the crown princess had actually calculated it correctly. The princess's brilliance is beyond what you could imagine. Minister Ren bowed respectfully to the Grand Tutor, imploring his help to buy some time. He had to investigate this himself. He immediately rushed to finish his urgent tasks, and gathered his guards to head toward the regional storehouses. He knew in his heart, if the grain in the transport hubs was also missing, his entire clan would be finished. Princess, was it wrong for me to stall for him? If I allowed you to intervene for him, it only implies he still has some shred of utility. However, my Shao Kingdom is not lacking in talent. A minister is easily replaced. Today, I reviewed the regional financial revenues and expenditures, salt and iron trades, tariffs, and all tax-related ledgers. I flipped through them one by one until I set down last year's ledger. It clearly stated an imperial revenue of 480 million taels. Yet the previous year, it was 510 million. My heart skipped a beat, and I immediately ordered the aide beside me. Bring me the general accounts from 3 years prior. The ministry aide immediately scrambled in a panic, bringing the books before me. The Grand Tutor saw this, and his expression turned grave. He knew I had discovered another inconsistency. Indeed, once I finished reviewing the ledgers, I smiled. I pointed to the books and recited out loud. Last year 480 million, the year before 510 million, and the year before that 540 million, then 570 million. 600 million every year, no more and no less. Exactly 30 million taels less every time. Grand Tutor, do you still think this is a coincidence? The aide was sweating profusely, yet tried to remain defiant. There are indeed fluctuations in the annual tax yields. I slowly lifted my gaze, staring coldly at him. I am barely 2.5 years old, yet this one glance made him gulp hard, not daring to look up again. I had no patience for his sophistry, and rose immediately. It is getting late, Grand Tutor, let us go dine. Terrified, the Grand Tutor dared not delay any more. Clutching his ledgers, he rushed straight into the imperial study. As for the matter of the grain tax, he could manage to stall for Minister Ren for a few more days. But now that such a massive hole has appeared in the silver tax, he dares not lie any longer. Father flew into a rage upon hearing the Grand Tutor's report, and issued an order immediately. Summon the imperial censor, Zheng Minchu. Just as I woke from my afternoon nap, Zhu Feng returned with a message from the Grand Tutor, excusing me from lessons tomorrow. He is afraid that if I keep digging, the entire Ministry of Revenue, or perhaps even the 6 ministries, will be turned upside down. And so, I was conveniently given the day off. No sooner had I been dismissed than Father arrived at my palace. Word had come from Consort Li, saying the 4th princess, Xiao Yunshu, had fallen ill, and she wished for Father to come and visit. Father asked me to accompany him. The moment we stepped through the gates of Consort Li's palace, Consort Li began to wail pathetically, and threw herself right into Father's arms. Before I could even get close, a wave of perfume so thick it was suffocating hit me first. Achoo, achoo, achoo. Father's brow also knitted into a frown instantly. He shoved Consort Li aside and demanded harshly, "Have you been marinating yourself in face powder?" Consort Li's expression stiffened, a flicker of displeasure in her eyes, but she quickly stammered an explanation. "Your Majesty, your concubine is not wearing any powder. It is the fourth princess who is ill. I stepped into the room and good grief, I nearly suffocated from the dry heat. It is nearly summer, yet my little sister was made to wear only one layer, while under these quilts she was wrapped in thick cotton layers. Her little face was flushed beet red, covered in cold sweat. Is this how one treats an illness? This is clearly trying to suffocate the poor child to death." The head physician stepped forward immediately and tossed the blankets aside in one motion. Who knew Consort Li would scream and rush over, shoving the blankets back on. "What are you doing? The princess has caught a chill and needs to sweat it out." The head physician was incensed on the spot. "That is not how one breaks a fever, wrapping her in such thick blankets. You will damage the princess's organs. Which doctor taught you this?" Consort Li lost her confidence in an instant. This is just our hometown remedy." The head physician rolled his eyes and ordered someone to fetch hot water. After some quick sponging, in less than a quarter of an hour, the fourth princess's fever broke. Then Consort Li started her theatrics again. Clutching the groggy fourth princess, she sidled up to Father. "Please hold her, Your Majesty. You are the true dragon, the son of heaven. You possess the imperial aura to protect her." Although Father knew full well this was a ruse, he loved his daughter, so he reached out to take her. Seeing that Father had really picked her up, Consort Li looked smug. She even shot me a provocative glance. The condescension in those eyes was just asking for a laugh. "Father, the weather is so mild today, and the fourth sister has so many palace attendants around her. How could she have caught a chill for no reason? Could it be that the servants have been negligent? They must be severely punished." No sooner had I finished speaking than the whole room of palace attendants thudded, all terrified and kneeling on the floor. Consort Li went pale instantly. She hurriedly retorted, "Falling ill is quite natural. The princess here immediately demands punishment for the servants. Is not she making a mountain out of a molehill? I am merely helping fourth sister discipline her wicked slaves. You seem quite unwilling." At this question, Father's gaze immediately turned suspicious. I did not mean that, Your Majesty. A slave's life is still a life, after all. Wicked slaves who bully their masters deserve to die. Since you do not need my assistance, then, Father, your daughter shall take her leave. Guards, take all those who serve the fourth princess and bring them in for interrogation." At the emperor's single command, those palace servants had not even been dragged away yet. When, scared witless, they confessed the whole truth on the spot. Turns out the fourth princess's cold had recovered long ago. Who would have thought Lady Li had such a venomous heart? To fight for favor, she acted like a maniac, nightly forcing her own daughter to bathe in icy cold water, relentlessly tormenting the child until she caught a recurring high fever. When the truth came out, the emperor was gripped by immediate fury. He stripped Lady Li of her title and cast her into the Ministry of Justice to perform hard labor. As for the fourth princess, she was handed over to the childless Chen Fei to be raised. It could be considered a better fate for her. In the blink of an eye, 2 months passed. Minister Ren returned from his grain audit. He brought back news of the kingdom's 5 grain transport depots. Each was supposed to hold nearly 200,000 stones of grain. But in reality, the depots were completely empty. That was not all. Another 30 million stones of grain tax had completely vanished. Minister Ren knew his life was at an end. So he spent an extra fortnight writing down the names of every corrupt official involved, filling an entire ledger. He only pleaded with the emperor to spare his family's lives. Upon reading it, the emperor was enraged and threw the minister directly into prison. As for the officials on the list, they were all purged and their families exterminated in a single night. A few days after the incident, I visited the Grand Tutor's residence. He was waiting for me in the garden, with an unfinished game of chess spread out before him. We played in silence until the game was nearly over, when the Grand Tutor finally looked up and softly asked me, "The minister wants to see you, princess. Would you care to grant him an audience?" I did not answer, but instead coldly questioned him. Does the Grand Tutor realize his life is in my hands? The Grand Tutor was stunned on the spot. I, a 2-year-old princess, if I meddled in state affairs based on imperial favor, everything before this would likely turn to smoke and shadows. And so, the Grand Tutor did not say another word. Soon after, he went to the dungeon alone. Minister Ren saw the Grand Tutor. A glimmer of hope ignited in his eyes instantly. However, as soon as the Grand Tutor spoke, he plunged him into the abyss. "Minister, are you aware that the Ministry of Revenue has more than just grain tax issues? I fear the silver tax is also problematic." The minister's face instantly turned pale as a sheet. The Grand Tutor sighed and continued. Gong Minchu is not back yet, so the emperor has only thrown you in prison. But if he returns and finds that the silver tax is truly in trouble. He did not finish his sentence, but the minister already understood. His body went limp, and he collapsed to his knees before the Grand Tutor. Just as the Grand Tutor emerged from the prison, he bumped into the minister's wife. She was utterly distraught, clutching onto the Grand Tutor like a drowning person grabbing a final straw. Grand Tutor, can my husband still be saved? The Grand Tutor only left her with one sentence. Madam, you had best return and await further news. Less than a month later, Gong Minchu returned. He brought back concrete evidence enough to have the minister executed 10,000 times. Before we thought it was only 150,000. Who knew that was only the tip of the iceberg? Over the past 5 years, the embezzled tax silver reached up to 4 million taels. From the initial 200,000 to 500,000, then up to 800,000, and finally 1,400,000. The hunger grew year by year. The greed swelled year by year. This shocking sum was not only evidence of the minister's dereliction of duty, but a death warrant for him. As the news spread, the minister's entire household fell into total despair. The minister's wife acted as if she had gone mad. Kneeling once more before the Grand Tutor's mansion gate, the Grand Tutor looked at her, exhausted, and sighed. Madam, why must you go to such lengths? But the minister's wife could no longer concern herself with anything else. She kowtowed repeatedly, crying until she nearly fainted. Grand Tutor, I beg you to save my husband. I will be your beast of burden. I beg you. Madam, it is not that I will not save him, but that he is truly beyond saving. Millions of stones in grain tax, 4 million taels in tax silver. If I said one word more, the entire Lin estate would be implicated. Do not make things difficult for me. The last glimmer of hope was shattered completely. Minister Ren's wife felt her world go blank. She collapsed suddenly onto the cold floor. Grand Tutor Lin approached immediately. Has the imperial decree for Minister Ren's execution been issued yet? Father. Father has only been watching for the past 2 days. At this moment, Father is troubled by a dilemma, whether to execute only the minister or to wipe his entire clan. For this, Father has summoned his officials for consultation. As it turns out, most of them proposed confiscating his property and erasing his bloodline. Just as Father was about to agree, Grand Tutor Lin gritted his teeth. He steeled himself to plead for the minister's family. Father's expression darkened in an instant. Grand Tutor Lin knew the minister's family was truly finished. Just when the Grand Tutor thought everything was settled and was ready to head home, an eunuch suddenly intercepted him. Grand Tutor, the Emperor requests your presence. When the Grand Tutor arrived, he saw me and Father playing chess. He bowed at once. Your minister pays his respects to the Emperor and the Princess. Father did not even cast a glance his way. He was clearly still angry about the Grand Tutor's plea. The atmosphere in the Grand Hall was stifling. Just then I placed a piece down, breaking the silence. Father, the Empress previously gave me 100,000 taels in silver notes and some jewels. I wish to exchange them all for cash. Did the Empress not already give you 100,000 taels? Why must you sell your jewels as well? Grand Tutor taught me that during winter's heavy snow, the common people will freeze and starve. As I said before, to build wealth one must first build roads. These 100,000 taels would make a perfect start. As soon as I spoke, Father was stunned into silence. Even the Grand Tutor on the side lifted his head abruptly. He looked at me in disbelief. He probably thought that my previous words were just child's play. He did not expect me to be playing a serious game. Father was overjoyed and made a decision on the spot. Very well, I shall select a competent minister for you to handle this matter. Let us arrange for Minister Ren to do it. Father frowned immediately. The minister committed a grave offense. His entire house deserves death. Father, keeping one minister alive would certainly establish authority. But if we build roads properly, the people can survive, and the Shao Kingdom will prosper even more. Upon hearing this, a flicker of light moved in Father's eyes. I followed up with an extra chip. Minister Ren's house was at a dead end, but suddenly found a path to life. They will surely give their all. I still have a hidden motive. 100,000 taels for roads won't last long at all. I need the minister to think of ways to earn even more money. In all the civil and military court, no one is better at making money than him. If he fails this task, Father can just confiscate his assets and wipe out his clan later. Who would dare say a word against that? These words left the Grand Tutor frozen in his place. Finally, Father remained silent for a moment. Then he patted my head and smiled. My eldest princess is truly wise, I agree. Having said that, he turned immediately to the Grand Tutor. Run to the ministry office and summon the minister to see me. At the same time, the prison was filled with a chilling gloom. Minister Ren's wife, with several children, was weeping as she bade the minister farewell. The minister fought back his tears, but the moment he saw the Grand Tutor, his tears burst forth immediately. He hastily wiped his face. Grand Tutor, have you come to collect the body? Minister, you are very lucky. Open the gates. The Emperor wishes to see the minister. Minister Ren's wife threw herself forward in an instant. Grand Tutor, does this mean my husband does not have to die? Go back and wait for news. On the way into the palace, the Grand Tutor said to the minister, initially, the Emperor intended to have your entire family executed, but the princess pleaded on your behalf. Minister Ren was shaken in that instant. Never would I have thought the little princess could save him at such a tender age. Yet, Grand Tutor Lin immediately changed the tone of the conversation. It is not as if you are simply being let off the hook. The princess values the welfare of the people. She wants you to oversee the road construction project. Minister Ren, this is your only path to redemption. If you fail this task, not even a chicken or dog will be left in your manor. The minister nodded repeatedly. He understood clearly that this was his only lifeline at the edge of the abyss. By the time he reached the imperial study, the minister had been kneeling for an entire hour. The emperor's icy voice finally echoed through the room. You have served as minister for 5 years, yet you remain blind to the affairs of the court. I would be justified in executing your entire clan to the 9th degree. However, considering the princess has use for you, I shall temporarily spare your household. You know the consequences if the road work is not handled properly. Your humble servant understands. The emperor waved his hand dismissively. Take him to see the princess. Just like that, Grand Tutor Lin brought the minister before me. Zufeng immediately took the hint and had someone bring in a large chest. The chest was filled with gold, silver, treasures, and banknotes. All of this princess's personal funds are in here. If you want to build the roads, this will be nowhere near enough. But you have served as minister of the 6 ministries. You must have countless ways to make money. Minister Ren's expression turned solemn as he made a formal vow. Your servant will find a way to generate the funds. You may withdraw. On the way back, Minister Ren expressed his profound gratitude to the Grand Tutor, but the Grand Tutor merely waved his hand. I did not help you. I merely put in a word before the princess. If not for the princess's need for you, no amount of pleading would have helped. The Grand Tutor's words brought the minister to his senses completely. He realized that his life now, from this day forward, belongs to the princess. He immediately bowed, with the deepest respect, to the Grand Tutor. I am deeply grateful for your guidance, my lord. Do not be in such a rush to thank me. Just focus on fulfilling the princess's commission. Minister Ren respectfully saw the Grand Tutor off, and as he turned, he locked eyes with the anxious faces of his entire household. His eyes reddened. He immediately embraced his mother. Mother, I have caused you to worry. The old matriarch burst into tears. As long as you are alive, that is all that matters. After the family calmed their emotions, they sat down to discuss the details. Upon learning that the favor of the minister's manor had allowed them to escape a catastrophe, the entire family was overcome with gratitude toward me. And when they heard I wanted the minister to build roads and earn money, there was not a single word of dissent among them. The matriarch made the final decision right then and there. Whatever we do, we must do it to the best of our ability. We must not fail the task entrusted to us by the princess. Minister Ren nodded and made a shocking decision on the spot. Except for the elderly and children under 12 years of age, everyone else will go with me to build the roads. The strong will handle the construction. The lean and agile will be responsible for generating funds. The women will be responsible for all the catering and supplies. The entire household was in unanimous agreement. Yet Minister Ren grew hesitant. Thinking of his mother's family assets. You wish to contribute the family's reserves to build the roads. Mother is quite willing. Take it all with you. As these words came out, the entire manor began pooling their wealth together. Even the minister's grandson, not yet 4 years old, brought out all his own saved New Year money, adding the entire manor's wealth to the jewelry and banknotes I gave him. The total came to nearly 300,000 taels. Just as they were discussing when to set out, a report suddenly came from outside. My lord, someone from the palace has arrived. The minister's heart skipped a beat, and he rushed out to welcome them. It was Zan who had arrived. She opened a box. Inside was a thick stack of banknotes. The empress specifically provided 100,000 taels, and instructed me to tell you, my lord. A single word from her had spared the minister from the death penalty. The Empress Dowager also sent another 100,000 taels. The concubines in the palace were the first to sit still, scrambling to donate money and goods. Soon after, the Grand Tutor also dispatched gold as a gesture of his loyalty. Now the entire court has no more doubts. Wealth arrived like a flowing river at Minister Ren's residence. The minister had every single coin meticulously recorded in a ledger. When the emperor heard of this, he was exceedingly pleased. He even went as far as sending a squad of imperial guards to provide protection. Only then did Minister Ren finally breathe a sigh of relief, because the funds in his possession had already reached 700,000 taels. These riches must not suffer any mishap, otherwise his entire clan would face execution. Ultimately, he chose to flee straight to the rugged terrain of Ganzhou, a place so desolate and mountainous that in times of old, people even resorted to cannibalism. Though conditions were dire, if he could just complete the mission, he would not only be pardoned, but could return to the imperial court. However, on New Year's Eve, did news of the emperor's misfortune arrive. The emperor, resting in Consort Chen's palace, suddenly awoke. He vomited fresh blood. By the time I rushed over, Consort Chen was trembling, kneeling on the floor. The empress and the gathered concubines wore faces of pure anxiety. The head physician was putting away his silver needles. I asked in a cold, piercing tone, "How is the emperor?" He suffered from mild poisoning that triggered a violent disruption of his blood and qi. Can the source of the poison be identified? The imperial physicians began turning Consort Chen's palace upside down. They found it inside her pillowcase. A lethal dose of poison. The evidence was as solid as a mountain. Consort Chen was frightened out of her wits. She kowtowed repeatedly. "It was not me. I did not plant this poison." In panic, she crawled to the emperor's feet, clutching tightly to his dragon robe. "Your Majesty, please see the truth. It really was not me." The emperor's face was livid, his eyes filled with lingering fear. He suddenly delivered a brutal kick to Consort Chen's chest. "I have not stepped foot in your palace for so long. Why is the timing so coincidental? Today, of all times, you just happened to poison me." Consort Chen was completely broken. Every concubine present remained cold and indifferent, with no one daring to intercede. In her desperation, she suddenly changed direction, grabbing hold of me. Seeing this, the emperor roared instantly, "Guards, seize Consort Chen." But just at that moment, a maid came running in, clutching the fourth princess, stumbling forward in total disarray. Seeing the fourth princess weeping so pitifully, Consort Chen threw all caution to the wind and pulled her into a tight embrace. However, the emperor's face remained as cold as frost. After the maid took the soundly sleeping fourth princess away, Consort Chen knelt again with a sorrowful expression. But the emperor remained utterly unmoved. Dark-faced, he was about to decree the fate of the fourth princess. I suddenly spoke up. "Let the fourth princess be placed under my care from here on, father." Everyone's gaze instantly converged upon me. I ignored them and looked straight at the kneeling Consort Chen, asking coldly, "You claim to be framed, then I ask you, has your pillow been changed?" Consort Chen suddenly lifted her head and nodded immediately. "It was changed yesterday because the fourth princess wet the bed. Everything inside and out was replaced with fresh bedding." A smirk curled on my lips as I turned to Grand Eunuch Chong. Grand Eunuch Chong glanced at the emperor, and seeing his silent acknowledgement, he immediately brought people to investigate. A short while later, the results were in. The culprit who planted the poison was a eunuch from the Internal Affairs Department. He had intended to harm Consort Chen, but had not expected the emperor to arrive so suddenly, accidentally poisoning the emperor. Instead, the eunuch remained tight-lipped and refused to reveal his master, so he was taken straight to the dungeons. Now, Consort Chen was proven innocent, and the fourth princess would not need a new mother. On the way back to the palace, the emperor finally asked, "Why did you choose to stand up for Consort Chen?" "I did not do it for her, father, but for you. You wish for us siblings to be harmonious, do you not? That the fourth sister trusts Chen Shanshan shows she really cares. If something happens to Chen Shanshan, it will reflect poorly on the fourth sister through the chain of connections. And if she is branded as someone who brings misfortune to those around her, father, I fear you would no longer favor her either." My words struck a nerve with father. Though he is the supreme ruler, he happens to be quite superstitious. Father's expression shifted, though he scolded me for talking nonsense. But he said nothing more, only telling me to go rest early. I knew my words had hit home. I later heard that, after I left, father did not sleep a wink that night. Rubbing his temples, he gave an order to Eunuch Chong and investigate the Chen Shanshan matter thoroughly. Check every servant in the palace, both inside and out. I do not wish for a repeat of this. It should have been a night of celebration on New Year's Eve. Yet father's palace felt chillingly cold. Eunuch Chong uncautiously asked if His Majesty had something weighing on his mind. Father let out a deep sigh. If everyone in this palace were as sharp and clever as the eldest princess, I would not have so many worries. In the second month after the new year, father made an executive decision. He actually intended for me to join the Imperial Academy, to attend classes alongside the sons of his officials. Even if it were only 3 days a month, it caused an immediate uproar in the court. All ministers grouped together in opposition. They insisted that such a precedent must never be set. My mind is set. Whoever dares to dissent gets 50 lashes, without exception. On my first day at the Imperial Academy, the bold children came up to try and befriend me. The timid ones did not dare approach, and some held me in disdain. I truly dislike dealing with a bunch of brats. So for those who wanted to befriend me but received no response, they swiftly ignored me, and I could not have cared less. But for those 3 days, whatever the tutor taught, I practiced without airs. The tutor grew quite fond of me. Roughly by the 6th month, the Imperial Guard in Ganzhou sent a report back to father. There were remarkable results regarding the roads in Ganzhou. Ganzhou is a vital artery of the Shao Kingdom. Before the repairs, no matter what one was transporting, it was always a drain on time, energy, and money in Ganzhou. Now, the common folk of Ganzhou see the improvements. Many are volunteering to help with the roadwork. Seeing this, the former minister Ren offered those willing to work 3 coins per day. It was not much, but it gave those folk who did not have labor at the time an extra source of income. As soon as the news broke, even more common folk joined the road construction. As a result, the roads in Ganzhou were completed even faster. Father was overjoyed upon reading the report. During the morning court, he lavished praise upon me in front of all the officials. My dear ministers, Princess Xiao Chanwang of our Shao Kingdom, though only 3, is extraordinarily wise and decisive. She possesses the talent to govern the realm and remains calm in the face of crisis. She has the air of a true monarch. Since ascending the throne, I have labored day and night, hoping only for a prosperous and eternal peaceful Shao Kingdom. However, a nation cannot go a day without an heir. Today, I wish to honor our ancestors and heaven, and designate the eldest princess Xiao Chanwang as the crown princess of our Shao Kingdom. To see the crown princess is to see me. His voice left no room for debate. It completely brought this unprecedented investiture to a final conclusion. That year, I was 3.5. I became the first in the history of the Shao Kingdom, and also the only female crown princess. I stood by father's side, watching the ministers, feeling completely calm within. I do not bother acting like a baby, nor do I bother wanting to be pampered. And yet, I never felt slightly embarrassed about inheriting this supreme authority, because I knew, from the very moment I was born, this path was already destined. My legend has only just begun.